And I just got an email from Chris. Are we having a show tonight?
Wow, it took that long for that email to get through?
Yeah, I just got it.
Whoa. Wow,
Yes, Chris, we're having a show tonight.
I sent that 10 minutes before you called from my phone.
Well, Seth and I had sent emails earlier today too. So
yeah, I thought I sent mine to EDL.
You did. So Chris, you got some email issues.
Yeah, well, and I sent mine to. I didn't get yours, Mark, but I got Seth's.
Weird.
Oh, because you replied just to me.
I didn't do a reply all. Yeah.
Okay, that's why I didn't get that one.
All right. 1, 2, 3, and away we go. I gotta say 2015, 2015, 2015, 2015.
2015.
Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Everyday Linux, episode 174. What were they thinking? Recorded January 4th. Gosh, I was looking at the wrong thing. Gotta do it again. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I'm gonna do it again. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the...
And Mark is broken.
How do I do the intro? I can't remember. It's been too long. I used to be pretty good at this. Okay,
yeah?
Here we go.
What happened?
Oh, I have a text. What am I?
Darn global warming.
My wife wanted me to know that the Cowboys won. Okay, here we go. Marker. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Linux, episode 174. What were they thinking? Recorded January 4th, 2015, and brought to you by Element Opie Productions. ElementOpie.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Linux show that's not about Linux, but about life in the context of Linux. I am your host, Mark, the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and joining me this week are your two stalwart co-hosts, Chris, the Command Line Godfather Neves, and Seth, the Gooey Kid Anderson. Hello, gentlemen.
Howdy, guys. How's things been? I hope your New Year's and Christmas was excellent.
And hello, Element Opie Land. We are so glad you waited for us. It's great to be back.
Yes, we did miss a week last week, quite unintentionally. We were going to do a New Year's Eve show. It actually would have come out on New Year's Eve, but that didn't happen because I got sick, as happens so often around the holidays. You know, all the kids come home from school and bring all their germs with them. And so I sent an email to the guys last week and said, I can't do a show this week because my throat sounds like two frogs humping in a storm sewer. So trust me, you would not have wanted to listen to me for 2 hours last week. As you may be able to tell, maybe not. I'm still not quite in full voice, but I am way better than I was. I don't know why, but sickness always attacks my voice. And you know, it's not like I communicate for a living or anything, but ever since I was a kid, anytime I get sick, I lose my voice. But I'm back now. How are you guys doing?
Better than I'm doing pretty good. A couple weeks ago.
You two were sick?
I kind of had the sicky bug, and then lots of family drama and issues, and now everything is slowly starting to calm down, and it's time to go back to work.
Yes. How about you, Seth?
Yeah, I wasn't sick. I just, you know, couple of more weeks of my boring life I can check off now. So not much happened from the last time I had the show. But I've just about decided I'm planning to go to Hawaii this year. So
Hawaii. You have a brother that lives there, right?
Yes. So I've just got to come up with the airfare, and you know I'm a cheapskate, so that's a hard thing for me to do, part with that kind of money. But when I checked the fares, it was like $700 and change to go.
Anybody out there in our audience work for an airline and can get Seth a deal on a flight to Hawaii? I know Hawaii flights are probably the hardest ones to get deals on, but I'm sure he'd be willing to fly standby.
You know, I mean, it was great to fly to Chicago that way, but as long as that flight I don't think I would like the possibility of having to spend a few hours at an airport somewhere. So I'm probably going to pay for the flight and just, you know, suck it up and spend some money on myself, something I don't like to do, because it's a new year, new me.
That's right.
Woohoo.
There you go.
I used to work with somebody who's had a family member who worked for Delta, and they got the I don't know what it is, buddy pass or whatever it is, but their whole family would fly for free. But of course, she would fly standby, and they were 5 people in their family.
Right.
But they would not only fly, but fly first class for free. So. And Delta also has some sort of thing with Disney. I don't know what the deal is there, but they got discounts there. So every time they had a break of any reasonable amount of time, they'd go to like Disney Europe, and just go. So that's a nice life if you can get it. Frankly, I don't have it.
Yeah.
me
Well,
neither.
there is someone in the audience who works for an airline, and that's how I made it to the LinuxCon. So, but that was show related, unless somebody's just feeling real generous and wants to give me a couple of tickets to Hawaii, or I even just really need one. So I don't know. I wouldn't ask for that. But like I said, if someone wants to give them to me, I won't turn them down.
I do have an ask for the audience, and that is I mentioned it last year. At some point in the past, I mentioned that a listener named Kaiser has been developing an EDL app with in-app commenting, and he contacted me a few days ago and said he needs beta testers. So we need some brave souls to sideload an APK on their Android devices. Right now, it's only on Android. You got to trust this guy to not be mining your stuff. And play with an app that is probably going to be buggy, but he's reached the point where he can't do any more without people banging on it. So if you're interested, let me know. I will email you the link to the APK or the APK itself. I need to get an updated version myself, but I'm sure that Kaiser would appreciate that, and you can actually put your comments right in the app, which is awesome because that's what it's for. The UI is pretty ugly right now, and that's okay. He knows that, and I know that. It's a framework. It's scaffolding. Nobody complains that a scaffold is ugly when you're trying to build a structure. So, it's just
unless it's an open source scaffolding competing
Yes.
with Windows, then
Yes.
everybody complains it's ugly.
So just you get what you get, right? It's an in-process app that's not working very well. But I need you to not just download it, spend a couple of minutes with it, and then give it a rating. I need you to actually spend some time with it. I need you to interact with it, listen to shows on it, comment on it. We need people who are actually going to use it to generate some, break stuff. That's the whole point of beta testers. Your job is to break stuff. And also, if anybody out there has any graphic arts cred and would like to help with the UI and the graphics, that would be awesome too. But anyway, that's the call that Kaiser asked me to put out there. We need beta testers. Just send me an email, mark@elementop.com. Let me know that you'd like to be a beta tester, and I will make sure you get a copy of the app.
That works.
Just a little
Yeah.
post-holiday revelry here. I got to ask, guys, what was your best Christmas present?
Well, I'll go first because I
Okay.
really didn't get a lot of Christmas presents. So my dad gave me a jacket that was like a size too small. I had to return it. And my niece is baking me a pie, so that will be my best present when I get it. So not
There
a
you
big
go.
present. But I don't have a wife and kids to dote on me, so I just take what I can get around the edges.
Chris, do you have any comments?
And and that sounded a lot more miserable than it was. I wasn't like miserable. I just didn't get a lot, so I wasn't. I don't know. As I was saying, I was like, "Wow, this sounds
terrible."
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was fine because I hung out with family, and that was cool. So
cool.
So, yeah, I had a pretty good Christmas and New Year's time. The nice thing about the whole Christmas is, my kids and obviously give me lots of stuff, and my wife, but my kids and my little brother got in on something and ended up buying me a Polar Loop, which I was going to buy after Christmas anyway. So that was kind of nice. So now I can see how inactive I am every day, or how active I become, because the nice thing about this particular device is it does do a syncing every so often with your phone, so you can track how active you're being and how many calories you're burning and steps you're taking, et cetera, et cetera. But it also shows you in a graph over time how active you've become. So like now that I'm getting ready to do some surgeries on my knees, that I'll be able to actually track to see, and I'll be able to show this to my doctor and saying, okay, this is my activity level now, and this is what I want to be above when I've done. So it'd be a nice training tool for me.
All right. I don't know what a Polar Loop is. Obviously, it's a fitness thing. Is it like a Nike Fuel Band kind of thing?
Kind of. It's like a Fitbit or not quite a smartwatch, but similar.
Funny you should mention a smartwatch, because that was my favorite gift
You're welcome.
of the year. My wife bought me a Moto 360 smartwatch, and I'm showing on the screen there
Jealous.
my custom
Jealous.
my custom watch face that I made. Darth Vader there.
Jealous.
The common question everybody asks me is, how's the battery life? And the answer, as always, is it depends.
Yep.
But during heavy use one day, using it for navigation and stuff, which is super cool, it vibrates when you've got to turn, and then gives you an arrow, turn left in 0.2 miles or whatever. And using on that heavy use day, I only got 9 hours out of it, and had to that wouldn't even get through a work day. My typical day of use, assuming I take it off when I get home and don't want to use it at home, would be I leave the house at 6:30 and get back at 5:30 or 6. So I need 12 hours, 11 and a half, 12 hours. So that day, obviously, I would have been quite disappointed. But every other day, I've gotten at least 12 hours, maybe 15 hours. It just depends on what you're doing with it.
Now, does that have the Qi charging, so you can just set it on a hockey puck and it charges it?
Yes. It comes with its own wireless stand, but I have actually bought a hockey puck. My Nexus 5 phone is also wireless charging. And I never realized how super cool that is. I really love it. I'm probably going to buy several more. I bought it on elmanopie.com/Amazon for like $18. I'm a Prime member, so it's free 2-day shipping. I'm probably going to buy a couple more of those because they're super cool to just drop it on the thing and go. And I've tried this particular one I got. It's called the Power Bot, and there's lots of different versions, but this one I can't make it not charge. I mean, I can just grab my phone and toss it on there, and it charges. So I hear people talk about orientation difficulties and that sort of stuff. With this particular device and my two devices, nothing. I throw the watch on there, even if it's not laying flat on it, it starts charging. It's fine. So
Wow.
I'm very
That's
happy
cool.
with it.
That's when I go to upgrade my phone or the next purchases I buy, I want to make sure that they have that Qi charging or wireless charging, because that seems to be, the coolest thing since sliced bread, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah,
That
and I've heard
is
people
just cool.
complain that it's slower than regular. I'm not seeing that. My phone charges at pretty much the regular rate. So my wife's new OnePlus One that I mentioned on a previous episode that I bought her doesn't have wireless charging. I thought they did, but they don't. But I got to say, she is loving that phone. It's a big freaking phone. It's a BAF or BAP.
Yeah.
But I've seen it just, in my anecdotal experience, the chicks like the big phones. And so I took a gamble on that and bought her the big 5.5-inch phone, and it took a little while to get used to it. She's still a belt clip person. Imagine that. Welcome back to 1997. But she likes it because she can clip it onto the outside of her purse mostly. But anyway, she's loving it, and I'm so jealous of her battery life. I mean, my Nexus 5 gets fairly decent battery life. I get 11 hours routinely. She'll get to the end of the day with 68% battery left.
Wow.
And just, she's on it all day, Facebooking and Pandoraing and all that sort of stuff, and, get to the end of the day, end of a 12-15 hour day with 63% battery. I hate her for that. But
That is awesome.
Some of that, there's some of those apps that I think part of their design is to suck battery juice, because I recently downloaded Word Crack and Trivia Crack to play those, and as soon as I downloaded them, I can just watch the battery on my phone drain. And I used to get through a day with like half a charge left, and now, just had my phone setting beside me in service, and the apps were even off, and it was like 50% by the time church was over. And I don't know what happened. The only difference is my phone is like 3 days older, and I've installed these 2 different games.
Yeah.
So in that 3 days, or it's those 2 games that are just destroying.
It's
the
all
battery.
it's all the phoning home.
Right.
I have mine
Yeah.
rooted and have a firewall app on it, and I can
Right.
tell a difference when I turn off the internet access to an app. I mean, it's a noticeable difference.
Yeah, and I noticed it a big time. I installed the DirecTV app on my phone, and I wasn't paying attention, and then all of a sudden one day I went from getting home from work and having 30-40% battery life to having 10. And it was like, wait a minute. So I went and started searching, and man, I don't know what it is about the DirecTV app, but that thing is a battery eater. Because it would burn what was it? It was the number 2 on the most battery consumption
Wow.
on the list. And I don't know
Well, of
what it
course-
was doing, but man, oh man, was it eating a bunch of battery.
Well, of course, I have the perfect iPhone, and so you can't really root that
Right.
legally. And but what you are supposed to be able to do is close the app, and that's supposed to totally close the app.
In theory,
Except
yes.
it doesn't
Yeah.
totally close
Yep.
the app. I guess that's the go incognito and suck battery or something, because it's awful.
Now, is that the old 5 or is that the new 6?
It's the 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old 5. It's at least 7 months old. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have the fingerprint scanner, so I
Yeah.
just have I don't have the
So you
5S. I just have the
Yeah.
5.
Yep. Yeah. Then you do have the old 5.
Yeah.
And not the new 5.
What a world.
Yeah, or wait a
Yeah,
minute, no,
that's
this is
horrible.
the 4 because I've got the wide thing on the bottom, so I have a super old phone.
Okay.
You have the old.
You've got
30
30-pin connector,
Yes.
not the lightning connector.
which is still garbage. I hate that lightning connector.
Yeah, the nice thing about Apple's connector is it charges, it brings data, and brings audio and video in one connector. On my phone,
Yeah.
I'd have to hook up an HDMI, a USB, and an audio. Well, I guess HDMI would do that for me to do the same thing. And it's doable, but that's why that 30-pin connector and then the lightning connector is so expensive. It actually does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And because it can be.
Yeah, well, it's Apple. That's like Latin. for
It is
expensive.
blessed with Apple. So.
Yes. And Seth, you got you talked about it before. You got the Kano device, the Raspberry Pi clone.
Well, no, it's a Raspberry Pi, but it comes with like some material to teach you like how to tinker with your computer and actually do programming and stuff like that. So I've got it. I'm going to play with it, and then we're going to schedule those guys to come on the show either late this month or early next month, and we'll have they'll kick off our guests of 2015.
Awesome.
Very cool.
I guess that's all I have to say about that. So I don't have any listener feedback this week. Not that you guys didn't send me any, just that what you sent me wasn't really appropriate for this show. I got a lot of, hey, look at this website stuff, and I love that. Don't get me wrong. It's just not all good stuff to put in a show. So we're going to do listener feedback less this week. And the idea of this show, by the way, we talked about doing it at one point a while back. It was great tech mistakes in history. And so I've scoured the internet and my own brain to come up with just bad ideas. What were they thinking ideas? So that's what we'll talk about. In fact, let's go ahead and do that, and we'll circle back to the tech news. That's where I work. That's a buzz phrase. We'll circle back to that. Every meeting, the word
that.
circle back is used at least once.
I hate that phrase. I absolutely despise the circle back phrase.
It's
I wanna throw
every
water
corporation,
balloons at
every
people with it.
entity has its own foibles like that. And where I work, circle back is a big one. I can't think of any others off the top of my head because I've been away.
You've got
for
to
a
drop into your business voice. Let's circle back to that one later.
week. Right. Yeah.
Or put a pin
Great
in it.
idea.
Put a pin in it.
We'll
yeah.
circle back. Yeah.
Oh,
Put a pin in
I
that.
hate
We'll
the
circle
pin.
back.
And reach out
Pin
to.
in.
You can't contact somebody. You can't ask somebody. You have to reach out to. I need you to reach out to Team A for that. I need you to reach out to Bob for that. I already reached out to Sue about that. Reached out. Would you go give him a hug? You sent him an email. Just say I sent an email.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's
Why
again.
don't you put a pin in that. Go interface with
We'll
him.
interface. That's a good one. Yeah, that's not big where I work, but I hear that a lot. You need to interface. No, I don't. I need to have a conversation.
Chew on my tongue, guys. Quit it. These are all pet peeves of mine, and you're hitting every single one.
It's where I used to work in education, we had different ones. It's just everywhere you go, there's its own thing. But anyway, circling back. So some ideas for things that just were dumb. Some dumb ideas. The E.T. video game. Such a terrible game that Atari actually paid somebody to dig a hole in the desert and bury them. Did either of you guys ever play the game?
I did. I actually owned a copy of that one.
You're the one. We found the guy.
I didn't buy it though. It was given to me. I think it was given to me as a horrible,
like a white elephant gift
or something. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, and there's many cross references. What's the word? Marketing. What's the word they call that? Crossovers.
Synergy.
Anyway,
Synergy.
there's lots of times where one medium becomes another medium. So lots of video games made after movies. Lots of movies made after video games. All of them are terrible. Without a doubt, all of them are terrible every time. Tomb Raider is the least terrible, but by so little.
Yeah.
Didn't have to. The bar wasn't set very high.
Right.
So, Double Dragon. Did you?
Oh yes, the Double Dragon
yes.
movie.
But Street Fighter was one of those.
Oh no.
It was so bad.
Right.
It was good.
It falls into the enjoyable because it's bad movie. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know about
and I'm not
that.
talking about the Legend of Chun-Li, which was just bad. But the Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme and who's the guy who died and that was his last role? Raul
Julia,
Yeah.
one of those. Yeah. Morticia. Gomez Adams.
Yes.
And then there's the Mario movies. There have been more than one of those, amazingly.
And they've been all horrible. Every single one of them.
And the video games made out of movies. The Star Wars video game didn't entirely suck. That's the best I can say from that one. Where you shot down the Adamant walkers.
Yeah, the console one with the vector graphics that came out like in the set. That one was pretty cool.
Yeah. But it's just, don't stop doing it, people. Stop doing it. Stop making video games out of movies and stop making movies out of video games. Just stop. So E.T. rounds the list there. Microsoft Bob. My note on that one is, seriously, what the heck? Did either of you guys ever play with Microsoft Bob?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So the idea was Microsoft thought that Windows 3.1 was too difficult. That it was the first major graphical interface on the Windows side, on the Microsoft side rather. There was 3.0 before that, but 3.1 was the one that was the sort of major. And they felt it was too difficult to use. So Bob was invented. You never actually met Bob. You were in Bob's house. And if you wanted to view media, which was laughable at the time, you went into Bob's TV room. And if you wanted to read something, you went into Bob's library. You could check Bob's mail, and oddly enough, he would have mail addressed to you. I don't know how that worked, but it did. Resoundingly hailed as the worst thing ever for a couple of reasons. One, the interface was clunky, but two, it required as much resources as Windows itself. Yeah. So back then, you had to load. You took your PC and you loaded DOS on it. That took 64K of RAM or whatever, 640K of RAM. Then you had to put Windows on top of DOS. Then you had to put Bob on top of Windows to make things easier. It didn't make it easier; it made it impossible.
If you were lucky, it made it impossible.
So, Chris, what was your experience with Bob?
About 15 minutes. I used it approximately that long, and then I said, "No, this is stupid," and I took it off. But
and worse, it was like $90.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't a free expansion pack or anything like that.
Yeah, it was, and it was one of those things where you wish you had your money back, but since you opened the seal,
oh yes,
you were screwed. So yeah, it was one of those moments of, I just wish I had my $90 back. Come on, Microsoft, I think you should refund everybody who bought POB and refund that.
I mean,
Everybody wants it back.
There are some things that listeners are going to say, why isn't that on the list? And let's go ahead and address that right now. Vista is not on the list because Vista wasn't a failure. It actually ended up being a really solid operating system. It just took it a long time.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not putting.
A lot of updates.
I'm talking about things that were just total mistakes.
Yeah, well, and the reason that Vista was so bad is they were selling it on hardware that could barely run the starter version, and they were putting the Windows Vista Ultimate on it. And so when you put it on a machine that had the hardware to run, I had a machine that came with Vista, and when I bought it in the time where they were giving free upgrades to 7. When I did the upgrade to 7 and I did the wipe and install from scratch, it ran better with Vista than it ever did when I put 7 on it.
Yeah.
So Vista wasn't a failure. The implementation of Vista was a failure, and that's on the hardware manufacturer.
And it was the first time in Microsoft history where they crippled backward compatibility. They just said the line has to be drawn here, no farther. We're not going to support your 8-bit stuff anymore. Deal with it. And that was a big deal.
And it was, and it made a lot of people very angry, which is why Vista was such a thorn.
Yeah. So while I will not argue with anybody that it was a commercial failure, I don't consider it a mistake. It was actually an important step they had to take to get to 7, which was very solid.
Right.
And while we're in the Microsoft category, how about Clippy?
8?
Let's be a little more annoying and actually not serve any purpose at all.
Of course, I always got rid of Clippy and moved it over to the Wizard. Because at least the Wizard was funny, or the puppy
or the
dog.
Genius.
Yeah, or the Genius, or the Kitty Cat.
But, it did give rise. If it hadn't been for those, we would never have had the Bonesy Buddies. So, clearly, that's an important part of computing history.
I forgot about
Bonsai Buddies. Clearly. No, it was, there were so many memes that kill Clippy and Clippy must die. The problem is that was pre-YouTube, and so it's really hard to find those videos anymore. But there were some awesome, I remember there were some awesome Clippy must die videos, and they're not on YouTube. Doggone it. How did we exist as a society before YouTube to archive our videos?
No kidding.
It's somehow we did. And YouTube still has.
I mean, because you can search for Miss Teen South Carolina and still
I personally believe that U.S. Americans.
U.S. Americans.
I remember some of the videos for that. Like, there was this one where this person was walking down the street, and she was trying to call 911, and it's like, where are you at? And she's like, I personally believe for the children, and hung up. It was, I feel sorry for that chick.
Yeah.
But those were some of the funniest things ever. All the parodies of it, and that's sorry, I got us off track there.
Okay. Moving right along, the one that started this, I mentioned it in a show a while back. Zyklon gas ranges from the Siemens Corporation. What a terrible idea. So in the World War II time, the Nazis, particularly I think it was Bayer Corporation, created a poison gas called Zyklon B, and they used that gas to exterminate tens of thousands, if not millions, of Jews. So a few years later, Siemens, who owned the name, thought it would be a good idea to open a line of kitchen appliances, including gas ovens, with the name Zyklon. What were they thinking?
Nice. That's a good one. I'll have to remember that one.
Now, that one never actually made it to the market. It was somebody woke up and said, whoa, back the bus up a little bit. But that's what got me to thinking about this whole topic. Zyklon ranges.
Did you ever watch the John Larroquette show?
Briefly.
I really enjoyed that show, and there was this one scene where he was going through some of his old papers, and he found this typed out thing, and he thought it was like an essay he wrote, and he turned it in, and the studio was going to make a show out of it until one of the upper level editors realized that it was the first chapter of a novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald or somebody, and caught it. So it was kind of that same thing. Somebody was just simply too young and too immersed in the current culture to know anything about history.
Right.
And that's all that happened, is somebody,
They looked at it
They
and said, "That's a cool. It sounds it's a new 21st century name, and we already own the patent to it for the trademark for it for some reason. So yeah, we'll just use that." Until a Jew heard of it.
Right.
Oh,
Wow.
bad idea, folks. Continuing in the bad idea category, the Apple Newton. The most amazing thing about the Newton is that they continued the line for 12 years.
Yeah. Of course, if you find somebody that ever had a Newton, they'll swear up and down that it is one of the best things.
Yeah, the three people who owned it really, really loved it.
Yeah.
The problem was it was incredibly expensive. It didn't. Okay, well, let me back up. The Newton was the first ever PDA, really. Before Palm, before BlackBerry, was the Newton. It was huge, about the size of a paper notebook. 9 inches or so, maybe a little smaller. Weighed several pounds. And had a stylus and a handwriting input. Those of us like myself who were Palm lovers, we loved our graffiti. The Newton had, ideally, it was supposed to be handwriting recognition. You didn't have to use graffiti. You could just write in your own handwriting, except that it didn't work for anybody except the guys in the lab. It sold a few.
The guy it was based off of.
Yeah, it sold a few things. It was a never anywhere close to a success. But they continued the project from 1987 to 1998, amazingly.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that it's been around that long. And then, how long did it stay? In not just production, but I wonder how many people actually used it after they closed it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
it was never very popular. The battery life was terrible. It just didn't do anything. Everything was in a proprietary format. It didn't communicate with anything, including Apple machines at the time, very well. And so that's where Palm really sort of took over, was they connected it with your desktop. You had your Palm desktop app, and you had your calendar and your to-do and all that sort of stuff, and that made the difference. Apple's didn't really work with that. The idea was that you would always interact with this device, like you do a notebook, right? That's the notebook meme. I don't plug my notebook, my piece of paper, into something else. It's all right there. So they were following that form factor and found that it just didn't work. Now it's working more now that our phones are windows into a bigger world, right? So
clouded.
Right. So my wife doesn't leave her phone. She very rarely uses a computer or a laptop. But it's not because everything she does is on the phone. It's because the phone is a window to everything she does. That's the difference. Yep. So Apple was a commercial failure, a technical failure, but an important step forward, the Apple Newton.
Yep. It had to be there.
There's a lot of things like here. Okay, it was definitely a commercial flop, but is it just a case where people like Steve Gates
Steve Jobs.
That's a good one.
Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. They saw so far ahead, that they were doing what they wanted to do. The hardware didn't exist.
Right. I have later on in the honorable mention section the Web TV, which is Microsoft's Newton. Great idea. And in fact, we're doing it today. It's called the Amazon Fire Stick or the Roku Stick. That's what we're doing today.
Right.
The technology just didn't exist. They wanted to do it over dial-up modems at 14.4 kbps on your 12-inch CRT television.
Great idea, just not too early.
Because somebody saw the Newton and go, hey, that would be cool. It's just like we have cell phones because somebody saw Star Trek and went, I want a phone that does that. And so the cool early cell phones you flipped open like Kirk did his communicator, and technologically or commercially, a lot of them were failures, but they, you can follow innovation. Without them, it breaks the innovation tree. So,
all right. So I may have to move that from the mistake category to the failure category. And there's a difference. Some things just shouldn't have happened. Like, for example, a Mars orbiter slamming into the surface of the planet. Last I checked, that's not orbit. That's called crash landing. Now, NASA has put things on the surface of Mars by slamming it into the surface. with big airbags, and they bounce them around, and that's intended. But the $125 million Mars orbiter was never intended to impact the surface. But apparently, math is hard, and somebody forgot to convert from standard to metric and missed the planet by several hundred miles. Oops.
Ouch.
Yeah, either that or they thought it was called the Mars lander instead of the Mars orbiter.
I should say they didn't miss the planet, they missed orbit. So this was in, I'm going to have to go to my notes here, 98, I think it was, maybe 99.
It says 99 on the article.
Yeah, that it happened. Big deal, big oops, big ugly scar on NASA's face. However, it was only a $125 million project. That's a drop in the bucket compared to,
Only.
that is less than the cost of one fighter jet, or one Apache helicopter. So those things crash in training accidents and cost more. So overall, it wasn't a terribly huge thing. If it had just been an equipment malfunction, nobody would say anything. But when they found out it was because people can't do math, that's what caused the problem.
It's the same people who now work at Burger King in the drive-thru. Sorry.
Yeah, and apparently it was one group was using American Standard, which is not standard, but that's the word for it, and the other group was using metric, and both assumed the other was using the same thing. So one was doing miles, the other was doing kilometers, and they didn't check the math. Oops.
Whoops.
I don't think there needs to be a whole lot of discussion on this one. The Titanic. That was a technical failure. The idea was that you don't have to build bulkheads all the way to the top decks because the water will never get that high.
And you don't have to put enough lifeboats for everyone because it will never sink.
Right. Oops. Along with
Sorry about that one.
Along with it, the Hindenburg. Due to wartime economics, the U.S. Pretty much owned the helium supply and had embargoed that. So Germany couldn't get their hands on helium. They said, hey, there's this other abundant gas that's lighter than air, hydrogen. We'll just stuff our air vehicles full of that. Not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, unless you want a flaming ball of death, maybe.
Well, that's what happened. Oh, the humanity.
So much like Pearl Harbor was the result of America's embargo of Japan, the Hindenburg was the result of America's embargo on Germany. So what you're saying, Mark, is that we Americans are evil.
Yeah.
That's what I take from this story.
Pearl Harbor could be on the list, except it wasn't technological. But that was a blunder in that the Japan attacked when pretty much none of the planes were on the vessels. So they took out the vessels but not the planes, and ended up their downfall. So either way, you could say that was a mistake. Attacking America would have been the right call at another time in another place.
Well, yeah, if they had caught the carriers, and if there was a lot of blunders on their site that really saved the American fleet as much as it did.
All right, so moving right along, math is hard even for computers. Intel made a Pentium chip that couldn't divide. I don't know about you, but I consider division a fairly important thing for a processor to do. But in 1994, Intel didn't think it was all that important. Their Pentium processor, that was the next step up from the 486DX. So this was literally their first generation, maybe second generation processor. Pentium processor had a silicon-based problem. It wasn't that the fact that they designed it badly, it was that it was built badly and couldn't divide consistently. Oops.
Yeah, an error once every 27,000 years. That'll mess stuff up.
It was, you're right, Seth. The reality of it was not a big deal, but the beating they took in the press, particularly from at the time, they had real competition from IBM and Cyrix. Remember Cyrix?
Right.
AMD wasn't even in the picture yet.
I don't. It's been a long time since I heard that name.
Yeah. So those guys were around.
Wasn't it the Vio or no? That was Sony's computer line. So
Cyrix just called theirs the 686 line because they were a little faster. But So anyway, it was a public beating, but also, Seth, that one error every 27,000 years, if that one error happens at a nuclear reactor and the 27,000 years happens to be tomorrow, it's a pretty big deal.
Bad thing.
So they ended up recalling tons of them. Next up, anybody remember the QCat? This was just one I pulled out of my memory. You guys remember the QCat?
I never had one, but yes, I remember. It's kind of like a light scanner that they made it look like a cat, and you could scan a barcode on something to like automatically take you to someplace online.
Right. So go back to 1994, 95. In the Dallas market, it was hugely pushed. I don't know about up where you live in southern Canada, Chris, but in the Dallas market, it was a big deal, to the point that Radio Shack was not only giving them to you if you went to the store, but they were actually just randomly mailing out things, right? So I got 2 of them in the mail, just as here's a QCat. So the idea was that you're the LL Bean catalog, and you want people to get more information because catalog space is cheap, web space is less cheap. I mean, catalog space is expensive, web space is less expensive. There we go. So you would put a barcode under a picture of a sweater in your LL Bean catalog that I could then take over to my computer with this LED-based barcode reader plugged into my serial port, my mouse port, which was part of the problem because most people had one mouse port and there was a mouse plugged into it. And you would scan that, and it was essentially a QR code. What we use them for today. It gives you a URL that you go to. So again, the idea wasn't bad, just that the implementation wasn't there. The technology wasn't ready, and people invested millions, if not billions, of dollars in these little QCats that nobody wanted. And I was, I am the tech guy, right? I'm the early adopter. I'm the guy who you want to get a QCat in the hands of. And they sent me 2 of them, which I threw away because it was useless.
No, I never saw any QCats up over by my neck of the woods. I did hear of them because I'm sure somebody got one in my little old town, but I never actually I don't even remember seeing the little barcodes that they.
That's the problem. You never did. Nobody got it behind it. So, like, the Radio Shack catalog had it, but that was about it. Remember catalogs? Just by the way, speaking of the year 2015, do you remember catalogs? They used to be a thing.
Yep. Man, Sears should have been Amazon because they already had that huge business of mailing out stuff. Imagine if Sears would have embraced online e-commerce.
Yeah.
It would have been open and shut. They would own it. And you would be saying, let's Sears that to someone.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon owns me at this point. I don't make a purchase that I don't first go to elementop.com/Amazon and see if they have it. They own my business. Way. I buy. I mean, if I need toilet paper next week and not today, I'll order it from Amazon instead of today. The only thing they don't own from me is the stuff I have to have right now. But pretty much, I mean, I'm not kidding, guys. From like late October through just this week, 3 days a week at least, there was an Amazon package arriving at my house. At least 3 days a week. One arrived this morning, Sunday morning, at my house because I just buy everything. My recycle bin is full of collapsed Amazon boxes. They own me at this point.
So when they get to the drones, you'll be happy.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. So yeah, you're right, Seth. There was the market that only one guy saw, and he wins.
Yeah, and and that's exactly how my grandparents were about the Sears catalog.
Yeah.
If it wasn't in the Sears catalog, you couldn't get it. And then, and you could take last year's Sears catalog out to the outhouse, and it was the ultimate in green technology.
So I still get catalogs pretty much, almost every day, 3 or 4 days a week at least. And what I use them for right now is starting fires. because they work really well. You roll them up, you wad them up, and you stack your wood on top of it, and you light a match, and they're good fire starters. The colored paper seems to work better, the glossy stuff, even than a newspaper. So that's what I do with my catalogs. I put them there on the hearth, and I rip out 5 or 6 pages, wad them into a ball, and start a fire with it.
There you go.
So keep them coming, guys, because they're a lot cheaper than those little wax starters. And actually, I have a gas fireplace, but I don't even want to pay for the gas. And of course, no list of goofs could be complete without Chernobyl.
Right.
This was not a mistake. This was a series of mistakes that came together at just the right time in just the right order. All the way from there were design flaws, there were construction flaws that were separate from the design flaws. Then there were procedural flaws all the way along, all of which caused the Chernobyl nuclear reactor to dump 200 times the radiation of the bomb at Hiroshima.
Wow.
That's a big oops. 70,000, I think, was the last count of people died directly, and hundreds of thousands more were injured or affected indirectly.
That's just it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's the mother of all mistakes. But again, it wasn't one mistake; it was a series. So they turned off the backup systems. They pulled. They ordinarily would have. I'm going from memory here. They ordinarily would have 15 control rods in maintaining the reaction, but during the test they pulled half of them out and were running on either 7 or 8 control rods, and which it was they were trying to do a meltdown. They're trying to overheat the reactor in a test scenario, but then they shut down the backup cooling system, and then when the alarms came on, telling them that there was a meltdown imminent, they said, "Yeah, we know, we're doing a test," and they turned off the alarm systems, and then it just got out of control. So it was a series of really bad decisions, but that sort of tops the list, rounds us out for really bad tech choices.
Yeah, that's one that definitely makes everyone, double check your backups next time.
Talk about a series of unfortunate events.
Yes.
Sorry, I just thought Lemony Snicket.
And then I have in my section of honorable mentions the Zune from Microsoft, a really good piece of hardware that just didn't catch on for some reason. It wasn't as cool as Apple. That's really all there was to it. It wasn't as cool.
And it wasn't as cool, and it also wasn't the hardware. The interfacing was horrible. As far as
did you own a Zune, Chris?
I didn't. I have a good friend of mine who did, and he would call me over every time he wanted to synchronize his music to the Zune. So every couple of weeks, I'd have to go over and help him with it because he just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, that's a problem. They didn't have Steve Jobs. That's the difference between the Zune and the iPod. Was they didn't have Steve Jobs. They had the engineers. And that's that's where you get to some of Google stuff like the Q, right? CUE, their web TV device that was designed by engineers and looked and felt like it. So anyway, that goes into an honorable mention. Web TV we've already mentioned. The idea was there, the technology wasn't. The Motorola Atrix, one device to rule them all. You plug it into a keyboard and a monitor, and it's your full operating system. No.
I think that was just ahead of its time.
Yeah, again, yeah.
That will be the way it is. You'll carry your computer with you and plug into a monitor somewhere. And that's what that was. I thought it was super cool when it came out. Obviously, I didn't have one because I was cheap and poor and wasn't that deep into technology back then. But
and by back then, we're talking 2011. It wasn't a whole long time ago, just about 4 years ago.
Was it 11? I thought it was more like, was it 11? Wow, okay. I remember it being further back in my mind.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was either 10. I think it won the CES award in 2011. It didn't really hit the market till 2012.
Yeah, so I think it was introduced in 10.
Back then.
Yeah, okay. So maybe it was the CES 2010 and then hit the market in 2000. But not that long ago. It just the technology wasn't there yet. But where we're seeing it right now is that idea is the Chromecast. And things like it, where you take something on your phone and you cast it to your TV. So, you'll plug in your phone to a charging dock, and use it to manipulate your other devices. Yeah, I agree, Seth. That's the way it is. The Atrix just wasn't it. It's just an idea before its time.
If your iPhone, it has the dock that you can plug it into for the cradle at home to be your speaker and everything, and connect to your TV. So you could almost argue that it's almost in that the iPhone is almost doing a lot of what it did with some of the docking features that are available with it.
Right.
I don't know, but
we're there. We're
I think.
Go ahead, Seth.
I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think the phones are quite capable enough to run full size monitors and do anything other than look at your pictures or something.
Yeah, we'll see.
Next generation probably will be, but I don't think we're quite there.
My point was we're there in terms of cobbling things together to get what you want. But I mean, the modern phones today have quad core, 3 gigahertz or 2 gigahertz at least processors. They're laptops of a few years ago.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is
not even a few years ago.
Yeah, phones are getting bigger and bigger, right? Because nobody wants to interface with that 4-inch screen as their primary interface. So that's where the things like the Chromecast and the Amazon Fire Stick and the Roku and these things come at. It's like I was talking about, the phone is the window into the other worlds. We want that big 60-inch plasma TV. Well, plasma doesn't really exist anymore. LCD TV to be our window into the world because it's so big and good. We're plugging other things into it. So yeah, the idea for the Atrix is sound. We're still moving in that direction. Motorola just was. They weren't ready yet.
Yeah, they were too early.
Yeah, that's a futurist design, the Atrix.
Right.
Say, this is what we'll do, and somebody said, that's a great idea.
Let's
and
make
then
it happen.
After it came out, can't do it quite yet.
And I just put this on here to razz Seth. Migo, a mistake that shouldn't have happened.
They
I know it didn't catch on, but it lives in Shellfish, and for a netbook and mobile interface like that, it wasn't a traditional operating system. They didn't just take the operating system and shrink it down. They rethought the GUI interface for limited desktop real estate, and in that aspect, I think it was a success. But yeah, it never caught on. Definitely a commercial failure, but it follows that chain of succession. If you take it out, I don't think we would be as far along on the mobile desktops as we are today.
All right, I'm going to let you have that last word. The Xerox Alto. This was an amazing product, not a tech mistake, but a business failure. What most people don't know. And I talk about it all the time because it's so fascinating. Xerox PARC, the Palo Alto Research Center, PARC, P-A-R-C. Xerox got like the top 50 smartest people in the world, stuck them all in a room full of beanbags, and said, invent the future. And out of that came things like, Ethernet, and other great ideas like that. Most of the internet protocols we run today, and a little thing that you might have heard of called the graphical user interface, and the mouse. The first mouse was invented there, and Xerox, being Xerox, right? It wasn't Windows; it was sheets of paper. Their monitor was 8.5 by 11, like a sheet of paper, and the papers laid on top of each other. So you would dog ear the corner to pull a piece of paper back. So they were so paper-headed, that's what they looked at. And they looked at that and said, this technology is amazing. These really smart people came up with it, but they recognized they were ahead of their time. They recognized they'd never be able to make it cheap enough. They'd never be able to mass produce it. They recognized that it would be a business failure. So they just said, okay. And so they opened their doors to other entrepreneurs who might want to take a look at it and get ideas from it. Some of those entrepreneurs you might have heard of were, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. They both ripped almost all of their ideas for the GUI off of the Palo Alto Research Center's the Alto, willingly, with their permission. These guys, Xerox just said, yeah, go ahead. We don't think we're going to be able to make anything out of this.
Yeah.
Talk about ahead of your
And look what
time.
happened.
If they had
That's-
stuck with it, all of our machines would be Xerox machines. They wouldn't be Windows. They wouldn't be Apple. They wouldn't be HP. They would be Xerox. They owned this. If they had closed the doors, Xerox would own the world right now.
Yeah.
Business failure, but their ideas there launched the future.
It's amazing the stuff
Totally
that
agree.
came out of that park.
Yeah, and I mean they were doing stuff that nobody had ever thought of before, and because they were so far advanced, Xerox couldn't figure out how to make any money off of it.
Yep. It's too bad because imagine I wonder what else they had stuffed away in that think tank that never even made it to being archived out.
Well, most of those
Obviously,
guys went and made their own companies, and
Right. But the question's still there. What stuff did they leave behind when they went off on their own way? Because I mean, they had to have had more things that just didn't get archived out.
Right.
Like the Alto, and we have the mouse and some of the internet protocols. But what else was left?
And,
That was
Google
my question whenever I
sort of tries to do that today. They try to put the smartest people in the world together, but that environment doesn't exist anymore. The smartest people in the world are highly sought after. Back then, the smartest people in the world, nobody knew how to handle them. They were a little odd. They smelled a little funny, and they didn't wear suits and ties, and nobody knew how to deal with them. So, out in California, the land of Haight-Ashbury and everything goes, they put those guys out there and said, we're not really sure what to do with you, but we think some good stuff's going to come out of here. Could anybody do that today in the modern market? Could Google? They've got the money. Apple's got the money. Could they take these guys like that and just throw them out there and say, no idea is too big or too small? Google has sort of tried to do that with their 20% time and their projects like that, but even they're being more driven by profit now, and we need an idea that's going to make us money or we're going to kill it. You get Wave, Google Wave, they killed it. Wasn't making any money, couldn't see anything good things came out of it in the end. But I don't think that in the modern business climate can exist anymore. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I think in the American business climate, everybody, the higher ups, are too short-sighted on this quarter's returns. The far-looking ones are looking at next quarter's returns. You would need a next decade's return mentality. I think Shuttleworth kind of has that long-distance vision of, hey, I'm sinking all my money into this because I think it's going to be something really great at the end. But the established companies and the venture capitalists and everybody who has the money, and Google is probably the freest thinking one, but they wouldn't be able to do this because they want something that can do now. And if you're research to make this one thing better, oh hey, that's outside this box, shut up and go leave and start your own company or whatever, without any money. But they're just too short-sighted today to replicate Park.
And I just don't know that business culture could ever exist again. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I think it's already been said over. I don't think the market would allow it to happen, because nobody just. I'm trying to think how to explain that.
Because you'd have to be able to lose $1 billion and not care.
Or more.
Yeah.
To be able to manufacture things that somebody just out of the top of their head they went, oh, this would be an idea, and to just be able to manufacture that and try it, you'd be losing. It would be an instant money loser, and with occasional hits. You'd probably get one hit out of every 2 years or something, maybe if you're lucky. And I don't know anybody that's willing to bet any money on that type of environment.
Yeah, and plus the first time you showed some inkling of a thing, somebody would swoop in and buy it up and cannibalize the talent.
That's true.
That led to that. So it would take a group of people saying, we're not going to break up. We're going to stay here. We're going to be poor for the next 10 years, and then we're going to rule the world. If somebody was willing to be poor for 10 years and everything they could do funnel their money into research, but nobody in America has a 10-year plan. You're lucky to find somebody with a 10-week plan in the business world.
Yeah.
You're right. And the last one that one of you guys put on the list was the Google TV. They tried to get into a market that already existed. They didn't do it well, and they didn't go for a future market either. It was just kind of a product that fizzled.
Yeah. I've actually seen one in the wild. Have you guys ever seen one? The actual set-top box?
No. I mean, they quickly recovered with the Chromecast, which is what the Google TV tried to be, kind of. It was one piece of the Google TV.
Yeah, it was a fraction of what Google TV or what Chromecast is now. It was actually very interesting to play with it. I actually got to unbox it and set it up for a client back then.
Wow.
Very interesting, and actually, when you sat down in front of it, it was actually really intuitive. Once you went through the engineering steps to use it, which is the biggest hurdle, I think that the reason they called me in, because they didn't know how to fill it out, because it was asking you questions about what you did and what you watched, and it took a couple hours to set it all up, but once it was set up, they said it was the best thing they ever bought. And I would almost bet they're still using it unless they terminated the service.
And then, other things like it, the Roku and the Fire TV and the Apple TV have all supplanted it now. Nobody doubts that people want web content on their TV anymore. Nobody has to convince us of that anymore. My complaint about a lot of those is that they're too heavily focused on web content, and they don't let me do my local content. And I have terabytes of local content.
Well, and that's where Plex comes into play, at least now.
Right, and the Plex is amazing because it plugs into all those other platforms and lets you do that stuff.
Yep. And I know Plex also just released their updates for PlayStation and Xbox, so you don't even have to have one of those extra devices. You can use your current stuff, which is cool.
All right, that rounds out our list of tech mistakes. It's by no means an exhaustive list, but it was all the ones that I thought were interesting. So now we'll move on to our tech news of the week. The Apache Software Foundation, like so many other things, is experiencing some growing pains.
Yeah, there was recent Apache conference, and they were talking about, one, how much they do with what small budget they have is kind of mind-boggling, but he's talking about how they have a process that's kind of expected to manage like 10 projects, but they're currently managing 150 and expect to be up to 200 soon, and they're too small to manage effectively what they have because they run so much of it off of volunteers. And Apache is one of those things that kind of underpins the web, but yet it does it on a shoestring budget. And so it just something needs to happen at Apache. They've got to get some type of money coming in so they can grow, or otherwise you're just going to be left with nothing but Microsoft IIS to run the internet, and I don't think anybody in the world wants that except maybe Microsoft.
I don't even think
and
Microsoft
they probably
wants
don't.
that.
Yeah, I don't think they want that either. So,
it's excuse me, it's a problem, but it's kind of a good problem. Too much success. They're a victim of their own success.
Yeah.
Right. And how are they going to manage that success moving forward?
Good question. We'll find out.
That's a good question. Yeah, I hope they figure out a way to get it taken care of, because the world would be a weird place without them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along. I would love to have had a better transition to this, but while we're on the subject of open source, Dice.com says your open source work can get you a job. So if you've worked with Apache and or other open source systems, you can get paid. Yay!
Yeah, well,
Nice.
because unfortunately, one of the, technology, especially the IT field, nobody, and I mean nobody, wants you unless you have experience. So it's like one of those, I can't have experience because nobody will give me a job. Well, you don't get a job until you get experience. So here,
Yep.
you can take and you can volunteer with an open source project. And Apache has a lot of them, tons of them in Linux, and you can work in the community, whether you're contributing to code, whether you're monitoring, peer review, any of that kind of stuff. And that's the exact same things you do contributing to an IT team in a company somewhere. And you can basically, this article just kind of shows you how you can kind of frame it in terms of project and how you would do it as a job, and you can get your experience. So when you go interview for a job, it doesn't, you're not leading with, I was a shift manager at McDonald's for 2 years, which, it's a great place to start. You can learn a lot of stuff in McDonald's, especially when you get into the management side. But you can say, well, I managed this open source project and I contributed to this code and I was active in the community. Here's my profile page.
Right.
You can see I moderated discussions and all of that. That's exactly what hiring managers want to see, is that somebody who is already doing the job they want them to have.
And this is Dice.com. This is a website whose sole purpose is getting you hired. They make money
Right.
when they get you a job. And they're saying, hey, people, we would be able to get you a job if you could show us that you had worked on open source projects. Just pay attention. When somebody says we're looking for people to give jobs to, and these are the things that you need a job for, maybe you should pay attention.
Yeah, no kidding. It's one of those things that I'm actually hoping that if my kids start showing talent in computer languages, because I'm going to start showing them these things now, it'd be interesting to see how it takes off and if they keep going that way, because this would be a great thing for their resume.
Yeah, get them a Windows machine and install Scratch.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, I have a question.
All right.
Suppose somebody wanted to work in an open source project, say related to Linux or maybe Amazon Web Services, and they didn't know how to, but they wanted to kind of go that way. How do you think they could get some experience to be a viable contributor to some project like that?
Yeah, I really think there'd be several steps that you would need to do that. One, you'd need a robust virtual environment, some sort of playground where you can get experience without doing any damage. Maybe a place where you could have like up to 4 different machines running at once, and running different variations of Linux and experimenting with them. And of course, you would need some good tutoring. Maybe some online video courses would be a good way to go there. You'd need something that is created by people in the industry who know what they're doing. That would be important. And a community of people around you who are going on the same journey that you are. Maybe some sort of forum system where other people who are learning and the instructors of maybe those online videos that I was talking about, maybe if they were in those forums too, that would be a good idea.
Well, dang, because here's the deal, Mark. If I'm going to do that, if I'm going to buy a computer that can run 4 VMs simultaneously, I'm probably looking at about $1,000 investment. Sure, I could buy a cheap $400 or $500 machine, but if I want the horsepower to do it, you're telling me it's going to cost me over $1,000 of my own money to be able to begin to get that kind of training, and then hunting and pecking through different YouTube channels, or one of those $1,000 for 2 months at some university somewhere?
Well, you certainly could go that route. You could do that, or you could do something like our friends over at the linuxacademy.com, where they offer you everything that we've said here and more. The step-by-step video courses, but not only are they videos like you'd find on YouTube, but they have notes with them, time-coded notes that go with the video, so that you can check back on your work. They have practice quizzes so that you can make sure that you understand what you just did. They have this amazing lab environment where you can run things all at once. And the amazing thing is, the most that you're going to pay there is $25 for a month.
$25. That sounds like a really good deal.
Yeah, you're not going to.
Where do I sign up for that?
You're not going to need $1,000. You're not going to need $500. You're going to need $25 to get started. You go to linuxacademy.com, you sign up for a month. But, after that month, if you feel pretty confident that there's pretty good stuff there, if you agree with the 2 independent third-party auditors who said that their content is high quality, and if you think you're going to stick around, you can buy in bulk. You could buy a quarter, which is 3 months, for only $20.
Okay, Mark. Okay. Well, so you're saying that this 1 month isn't just an introductory rate, and they're going to stick it to me after that,
No, not at all. You can pay $25 a month forever if you want to.
right?
Wow.
But, like anything else, the more you buy, the more you save. So if you buy a quarter, if you buy 3 months, it's only $20 a month, $60 for a quarter.
Cool.
And if if you want to take a bigger bite than that, you could buy a whole year for $199, which breaks out to less than $17 a month. So Seth, no, not thousands of dollars to get started. Really, sort of the most you're going to be able to pay here. I'm sorry, but the most that it's going to cost you is $200 for a year.
Jeez.
$200 for a year. That sounds. If I really wanted to get into IT and I didn't have a background, but is this one of those things where I already need to be a command like Godfire, and they're just going to show me how to pass some test somewhere?
Well, if you already are, they certainly have stuff for that. But their purpose, their stated purpose, is to take you from being a computer beginner to a Linux server administrator. That's what they're here for. LinuxAcademy.com. That's right there. That's their mission statement. When we had their founder on the site, that's what he on the show. That's what he said. We want to take you from being, not a total beginner. You got to know how to, boot stuff up. You got to know how to watch videos. You got to know how to fire up, the PDF reader to look at the notes. So you can't just be a total noob, but if you can work Facebook and YouTube, you're probably pretty good.
Wow. Well, that's
Cool.
easy
That
to
sounds
get
awesome.
into then.
Yeah. And when you go, use the referral code EverydayLinux and let them know that we sent you to linuxacademy.com. And now moving on to our next bit of story there. Maybe the world is going to get a totally free computer. Maybe. It's been in the works for a while.
Yeah, we actually talked about it. The Librem 15, a free as in Libre software laptop that's no closed components. Everything's open source. And it looks like they might actually make their goal. They've got like about a month left, and they've raised over $160,000 of their $250,000 goal. So over 66% funded, and they actually have 27 days left. So and if the free has in free has in not free as in beer, free as in speech,
Yes.
is really important to you, then and you're going to buy a laptop anyway. Basically, you buy one a few months early to fund them, and you'll get you'll help fund them, and you'll bring that free as in speech hardware into the world.
Now, this, as I'm reading this, Seth, this doesn't look like it's open source hardware, but it's fully loaded with only open source software. Not at any point did any Windows or Mac stuff touch this thing.
Well, and even the drivers for the things are open source. Everything is non-proprietary. So yes, not open source hardware, but aspect of software from drivers on up. Which even a lot of Linux has not all of them, but a lot of the distros have proprietary, whether they be drivers or packages in them.
Yeah.
So, like I said, free as in speech. I think it's important. Can't afford much money.
Yeah, I'm calling minor BS on this, because you could really buy any laptop, format the hard drive, and do this yourself. But if you do that, it's probably going to cost you about the same amount of money based on their specs here. They're selling $1,600 machines that are, the equivalent of $1,300 MacBooks. So you're paying a little more to support freedom. If that's important to you, go back this project at crowdsupply.com.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting spin on this. I would say the other place you could do this is over at what is that? Linux System 76.
Yes.
I think it's basically the same idea, where the hardware is is available for you no matter what.
Yeah, it's not something I'm going to support. It doesn't scratch my itch, but it's out there if you want to do it.
But if you're really a GNU/Linux purist, and if you want to be Richard Stallman improved, he's probably salivating at the corners of his mouth over this.
Yeah.
So.
So Sony, North Korea allegedly attacked Sony. Then suddenly, mysteriously, their internet went away. Nobody's claiming credit for it. It is suspected that it's a U.S. response to it, but officially, the only official U.S. response is that the U.S. has placed sanctions on Korea. Whoa.
Yeah,
sanctions.
Additional sanctions, because we already had sanctions on them for their nuclear program. So, and here's the thing, it's not even proven that okay, I'm sure they benefited and they might have wanted the hack, but it is proven that it came from North Korea. But we're past the point in the news cycle where it can be, like I say, I could walk in tomorrow with a laptop loaded down and show detailed instructions and say, I did this. Here's the proof of everything I did. This is the toolkit I used. This is the social media. But it's too late. It's North Korea's fault,
Right.
and nobody can change the storyline with something as inconvenient as the truth. So and again, maybe North Korea is behind it. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. They're getting in trouble for it. It's like the problem child. The good kid can kick the cat and then say the bad kid did it. And since the bad kid's known as the bad kid, he's going to get busted for it when he didn't do anything.
And let's not lose sight of the fact there that what they're saying here is we're going to already not do business with a company we don't do business with much, and we're going to already publicly denounce a company we already publicly denounced. This is meaningless. Sanctions are the governmental equivalent of saying, you shouldn't have done that, and so that's what the U.S. has done.
Yes, we weren't trading with you with 99% of our economy. Now it's going to be 99.5% of our economy that can't trade with you. So, yeah, it's it's like we were talking about the last show we did. We can't really do much to them. We can't take stuff. It's like the problem child. If you do that, I'm going to take away one of your toys, and if you do that, pretty soon there's no toys left. And they're sitting in their room with no door and a mattress with a sheet on it, and you've taken everything else. It's like, what else are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
You've already done it. And so, yeah, but, sanctions, woo.
Yeah. Moving on, Apple says their Touch ID is the most secure way to interact with a phone, and hackers say, yeah, so what? Most secure doesn't mean secure.
Yes, this hacker from Germany, the Chaos Computer Club convention in Hamburg, Germany, this guy used a phone to take pictures of a German defense minister's thumb, and was able to, with a close-up shot and some other shots, and composite a picture together that could defeat the fingerprint sensor. And he didn't need to lift prints off somebody. He lifted prints with this camera, and it's not like this is some super secret camera that only the NSA has access to.
Just a phone camera.
Yeah, this is like you don't even need the iPhone 6 phone. Probably the iPhone 4, or the latest couple of generations of Android. There's so many megapixels in there, and there's so much detail in that you can blow it up to see ridges if you get a clean shot. And it's not like you got to stick the phone right up next to the thumb, but you can be a few meters away walking by software to kind of composite one together, and available toolkits that these aren't hacking form things. These are available off-the-shelf software, and then you've defeated the fingerprint sensor. You say, ooh, it's only my iPhone. Well, or it's only my smartphone, so what? Well, that smartphone has your banking data, but not just that. There's so many sites that use fingerprint has a method of proving validity to be able to enter. And so, now you've just got to, I guess everybody's going to start walking around with gloves.
Yeah.
And then kind of take them off and put one hand over the phone and put it on there.
Apple will fix this, and they'll make it harder. Some of the thing here, you can have really good biometric security, but it's expensive. And
Right.
Apple has gone for something that is cheap, mass producible, right? So they're selling the iPhone for $700, but they're making them for $150, $200. So they got to
Right.
cram all that stuff in there as cheaply as possible. And it needs to be super easy to use, and Touch ID is that. You just touch it. So they're going to fix it. They could add in, pulse sensors and other things like that. They could look at, there's all sorts of things they could do, but they're balancing it. And this is pretty good, right? So this has to be a targeted phishing attack. Somebody's got to be stalking you, getting pictures of your fingers, and they got to know which finger you use, which is not too hard. They could watch you do that. So this isn't just casual hacking. This is determined hacking, and Apple's going to make a business decision whether they think this is worth fixing or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those. If they do like two-factor authentication, something you have and something you are, some type of token. Anyway, it was just take the time to read the story. It's one of those. It's cool that the technology is available, but at the same time, it is a little creepy as well. So, but it's one of those. That's cool.
Yeah. And I mentioned earlier that Amazon owns me. Well, apparently they own lots of other people based on their recent numbers that they produced about how many people bought what during the Christmas season, the holiday season.
Yeah, we talked about Black Friday by the numbers last show, but here is on Cyber Monday, Amazon customers ordered more than 18 toys per second just from mobile. The last order successfully delivered before Christmas was placed at 10:24 p.m. and delivered at 11:06 p.m. The customer ordered via Prime Now. That's just amazing. The main reason I wanted to talk about this article a little bit was that Google's Chromebooks are for the second year in a row, are the top-selling computer on Amazon. Now, again, that's not to say that more Chromebooks were sold, because, like, say, number one is Chromebook, but when you add up 2 through whatever, there's still more Windows and more Macs sold. But the number one most popular one is the Google Chromebook. So, it's one of those, we've got kind of it's always been Microsoft at 90%, Apple at 9%, and others at 1%. It's like, there's like Microsoft is still the dominant desktop and laptop experience, but now in addition to Mac, you've also got Chrome, and so there's more of a race now. It's not the 800-pound gorilla. It's like a 600-pound gorilla and a couple of 100-pound monkeys.
And then the last story, a company that many people have written off for dead is doing what looks to me like a last-ditch effort. Kodak is going to start selling Android smartphones.
Yeah, I don't understand. They're going to be the ultra-rugged smartphones, I think. But yeah, so they've Kodak has been around for a long time. They didn't diversify. They kind of hung their future on photos, on printing photos and standalone cameras. And when the smartphone overtook them, they kind of died and withered on the vine. So now they're trying to come back, and they see as one aspect they can license their brand name, because like Kodak, especially with people a little older than me, they're a really established brand, and you bring certain positive or brand recognition is very good for them, and so they're hoping they can cash in on that, and so you can get a Kodak Android phone. This is one of those announced, but the first smartphone will be unveiled at CES in January, and then there'll also be like a handset, a tablet, and a connected camera arriving sometime in 2015, they say.
Yawn.
Yeah.
A little bit. That's kind of a really low point in the show on. At least end the news stories on.
So let's move on. So speaking of a company that's mostly history, Seth, what happened this week in history?
Okay, January the 1st, 1983, ARPANET officially changes to using the Internet Protocol, creating the Internet. So,
Wow.
Internet has kind of become a generic term now. It was a proper name at one point, and it came into existence in 1983, January the 1st.
Yeah, so ARPANET was built by the Defense Department, but by 1983 was Defense Department and lots of educational institutions and research institutions and medical institutions
Right.
using like the Gopher protocol and all that sort of stuff. Well, even before that, wasn't it? Gopher was built on IP, so they needed a unifying protocol, and Internet protocol was the thing. And so they flipped the switch. And probably wasn't 100% IP, but they started using IP on January 1st, 1983.
Well, it's probably one of those, they were using both and they made it official.
Right.
You know, and they waited
Right.
because the new year kind of thing, I'm sure.
Right. All right. Cool. Well, that's that. I love that. Those
That's a
kinds
good
of history things. The history of the internet is an amazing thing. You know, the end of years and the beginnings of New Year's, even though the dates are entirely arbitrary, somebody just decided at some point December 31st was the last day of the year and January 1st was the new day of the new year. So it doesn't mean anything. I tend to poo-poo New Year's Eve as the 1 second holiday. Everybody gets together and goes, woo! And then that's kind of it. It's not much of a thing, but it is a time to pause and reflect, right? And just think about the things you do, the words you use, that you didn't do in 2013. And you know, Snapchat was not a word that people use regularly in 2013. It was around, yeah, but it wasn't as big a thing. Uber
Or WhatsApp.
you know, WhatsApp, you know, these things. You want to go, if you really want to be stark, you know, you go back to, this is the year that Marty McFly traveled to in the second Back to the Future movie. So 2015 was where we were all walking around with our pants inside out and wearing metal heads and stuff. So that was 40 years ago.
Jeez.
Yeah, 30 years ago, excuse me. So
That's
go
still-
back.
wow.
Yeah, go back and look at what's changed in 30 years. It's hard to see what's changed in a year. Definitely, I would not have been even considering wearing a smartwatch at the beginning of 2014. So a year later, I own one. Because and as many people point out, the Moto 360 has a processor that it's a couple of years old, right? So I'm wearing the best smartwatch of 2013. But the ecosystem came together to the point where it was worth happening. And so there's always stuff that happens like that. But when you're moving in the flux of it, it's hard to see. But when you go back big chunks to 1983, all right, so that was 22 years ago, 32 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time carrying ones this night for some reason. 32 years ago, we just started using IP, and now we're talking about, you know, whether the Atrix is going to be replaced by a combination of the Chromecast and the phone. You know, it's amazing to me how far we've come in that chunk of time, and you know, to think what my kids, when they're 40, my oldest daughter is 12. When she's 40, what is she going to be talking about?
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to wax rhapsodic there. I was just thinking, you know, this week in history and this time of the year when we start thinking about history, we are moving so fast that already at 42 I can't keep up anymore. And you know, younger kids are outpacing me in keeping up with the new technology. Things come and go before I even knew they were a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And that pace is just going to accelerate more and more. I'm the grumpy old guy telling you to get off my lawn.
It's nuts, isn't it? When you look back at it and go like, "Jeez."
But my mental self-image froze somewhere around 24. In my mind, I'm still 24.
There you go.
Every now and then I try to pick up something that I could have picked up when I was 24, and my body reminds me that you're not anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching an episode of Jag. I loved the show, and there was a guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was an old man, and he was asking Harm, you know, what does it feel like? Do you know what it feels like to be 65? And Harm was like, no, and he goes, sure you do. It feels just like you're 18. It's just your body's a little slower.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, but yeah, because, you have that mental picture of yourself in your prime. And once, for most people at 40, they're on the downhill side of prime, and of course with proper nutrition and working out, you can make it a gradual descent. Or others of us, it's like a cliff. But, it's like, but in my mind, I'm still 20 something. And so, yeah.
It's a cliff that I'm
Sorry.
rolling off of, having just come from an all-you-can-eat buffet. That's
Right.
the way I'm handling it. Forget growing old gracefully. So, Seth, what have you come up with this week to decrease my productivity so that you are a more attractive hiring opportunity?
This one has a lot of potential. sfcrowsnest.org.uk. This is it's just a collection. It's for the geek in us all. They do like book reviews, sci-fi stuff reviews, DVDs, mangas, anime, stuff like that. It's just a collection of articles and links from their About page, originally set up in 1991 on the Apple Inc. online service, a pre-web bulletin board system founded by Steve Jobs' Apple. SF Crow's Nest is the oldest online magazine dedicated to such geek interests as science fiction, fantasy, horror, steampunk, science, engineering, futurism, and other worthy genres. So if any of those appeal to you, sfcrowsnest.org.uk, and the link will be in the show notes.
I'm kind of scared to click on that because I don't know how far down the rabbit hole that will take me.
I'm
I've already found a book.
You, Seth.
I've already found a
happy
book
with
I
you.
want. I might be coming for your job, Chris. The Alien Invaders Resistance Manual is a book I might have to buy just from I found it on here. But yeah, all kinds of it's neat stuff. I came across this one, and this has been on my list for a while, so I thought I would share it with the world.
All right, and just a quick note of apology. I have DSL service now, and as many people know, when phone lines get wet, they don't work. And we had a major rain event over the last couple of days, and so my bandwidth has really sucked cheese tonight. And so Chris and Seth have been coming in and breaking up a lot. Ordinarily, that's not a problem because I take their local audio and dump it in, and you never notice it. But my Audacity session that I record everything on has crashed. Actually, not Audacity, but the whole laptop has crashed. So I'm probably not going to be able to do that. So this crappy audio is what you're going to be stuck with. Sorry about that. I'm going to try to clean things up as best I can, but I don't know that I will be able to do much. So if our first show of the new year sucks, I really won't be that unusual. So just wanted to get that out there, and also tell you how you can contact us. What did we leave off the list that you would have put on this? What did we call a failure that you think wasn't? Let us know over at elementop.com. Use the Contact Us button at the top of the page. Send us an email that way. Or if you just want to directly email us, you can do that at edl@elementop.com. That goes to all three of us simultaneously, so I can't filter like the evil big brother that I am. Or if you want to have your voice right alongside of ours, you can leave us a voicemail at 559-I-AM-OP anywhere in North America. That's a free call. Or you can use the Call Us widget. Leave us a voicemail widget right there on our page. Enter your phone number. Name is optional. And Google Voice will call you, and you can leave us a voicemail. Those are all ways that we can hear from you. We like hearing from you. Even when you say bad things, we like hearing from you. So we encourage you to do that. That's all I got to say. Chris, Seth, as always, you are the best hosts that I can afford. Listeners out there, we do this for you. Thanks for hanging with us for yet another year. We hope 2015 will be the best year of the podcast yet, and thank you for hanging with us. And for now, that ends this episode of Everyday Linux.
Later, y'alls.
See ya.
Alrighty, and live viewer, bye-bye.